So SGP is a mind shift of sorts. It's comparing your students to other students in their same grade, but with a similar history of achievement. So let's look at an example. This is Krista. She's in the 6th grade, and her most recent STAR score was a 1069. Before that, her score was a 1050. That's an increase of 19 scaled score points. But how do we know if this is growth, typical, low, or high? So let's look at how SGP is determined. Krista scored a 1069. She scored a 1050 prior to that. And just like all of these other students who also scored a 1069 and a 1050 the last time. We can refine this academic peer group by looking even further behind and considering the test data from a second prior testing window. We're looking for students who are walking the same achievement pathway as Krista, meaning they scored the same as Krista in both the prior and the prior. And we remove students who have not walked that same path. So now we're only comparing Krista to those students who have the most similar history to hers. We put them all in the same bucket and we compare them. When we compare, we see that some kids made less growth than Krista, and some made more. Krista grew as much as or more than 58% of 6th graders with a similar score history or in the same amount of time. So this gives her an SGP of 58. Thinking of that visual and all of the students who have a similar performance and history of performance, and they're all put into that bucket, those who don't match up are not in that bucket. So the bucket is 100% of the group we're looking at. And when we look at where Krista falls into that group, she falls in the middle at that 58th percentile. So we'd say she made typical growth. Students who fall within the 1st to 34th percentile are considered to have made low growth, and students who are set in that 66th to 99th percentile are said to have high growth. 50 SGP is right in the middle, and we say 50 SGP is what a student's 1 year typical's growth would be. So in order for an SGP score to populate, students must have taken at least 2 tests in 2 different time frames to see an SGP. In SFUSD, you took STAR beginning in October, in that October to November timeframe. And then your second testing window is now, January 29th to February 23rd. So you'll be able to see an SGP for any of your students who took the test in both screening windows. So remember, it requires at least 1 test in 2 different time frames. You will not receive an SGP or see an SGP score if you have a student who took the assessment in October and then again in November. You will not have an SGP. Has to be in one of these different timings or time frames. So where do we find all of this fabulous growth data? Today, I'm going to point you to the growth report. You can log into your Renaissance dashboard if you'd like. When you pop in there, you can go into your reports, and I can log in here and show you in my demo account what that looks like. So this is demo data, not real student data here. We're going to go under reports, and I'm just going to point you to where that report is. So when you select reports, you'll select STAR assessment. And you can see I have some pinned reports up here. These are my favorites. I always come to these, so I have them pinned. As I scroll down, I can see a category of screening and instructional planning. These are your reports that will lend themselves to instructional planning for your students. And then growth and progress. These are all of your growth and progress reports that are available to you. And this is that STAR growth report I'm referring to. When you populate this report for your students, you will see data that looks similar to this, where you'll have all of your students rostered. You'll be able to see their growth and proficiency categories side by side. It's most important, however, to look at the number. It's going to automatically populate high or low growth or proficiency, but if you look at the number, you'll be able to see where within that band are they falling in low, typical, or high growth. Remember, any student who scores 50 and above for SGP, on this report, it's going to populate as high growth, but we know 50 to 65 is that typical growth, right? And then we move into that next category. Above 65 is going to be the high growth. So just something to point out there. And then under this column here where it says PR, that's the percentile rank. That's your benchmark. That's your achievement. And so above 40 PR, above 40th percentile rank is where you'll be able to see that typical, that high achievement. It's going to be above the benchmark for your district. And so we can see here, this student, these last two testing periods, a 1 PR and a 16 PR. That means that compared to all other students assessed in that grade level across the nation, whatever grade level this is, they lined up in the first percentile or in the 16th percentile compared to all students tested, no matter what growth they had. That's what percentile rank is, just testing all students in that grade level, lining them up and looking at where they fall. When we're looking at growth, we're taking students who score similarly to them. So we're taking the high achievers in that grade level and comparing them to other high achievers, not comparing them to all students, but really narrowing that bucket and putting them in with other high achievers, similar score history. So we can see, compared to students who score like them, where do they fall? That's the growth. And so now we can look to see, although the student might be low proficiency, look at how much growth that student is making. So we have a student who is falling in a low proficiency, right? Not achieving, not falling above that 40 PR, but compared to other low proficiency students, this student is making significant growth.